ADX Florence, the last address the American government gives to men it can no longer control. These 7 black gang leaders didn't just run streets. They ran empires that made the federal government nervous. One controlled a $100 million operation from behind bars. One sat in a cell and negotiated with Gaddafi. The government didn't just convict them, it buried them. Before we get into this, drop a like and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Number 7. Dwight York. On May 8, 2002, in Eatonton, Georgia, a man named Dwight York was arrested in a parking lot while leaving his compound with his girlfriend. That morning, around 300 federal agents, FBI, ATF, and local police showed up at the property. They found about 30 guns. York didn't resist. He got handcuffed, which was an unusually quiet exit for someone who had spent years telling people he was a divine being from another world. York went by several names: Malachi Z. York, Isa Muhammad, Thaba. He led a religious group called the Nuwaubian Nation of Moors, starting in Brooklyn, then moving to a 475-acre property in Putnam County, Georgia in 1993. On that land, he put up pyramids, sphinx statues, and Egyptian-style buildings. Members called it Tama Re and treated it as their own separate nation. Inside the compound, York controlled daily life. Men and women lived separately. Children were taken from their parents after toddler age, divided by gender and age, and homeschooled. Parents got short, scheduled visits, brief enough that kids grew up barely knowing their families. York had multiple wives who handled his personal and business needs. Anyone who didn't follow the rules got pushed out. The families inside believed in him completely, which is the only reason the whole thing worked. Federal prosecutors charged York under RICO, the organized crime law. Court records show he sexually abused children within the Nuwaubian community across New York, Eatonton, and Athens, Georgia. Some victims were around 6 years old when it started. Certain adults in the community, including some of York's wives, were used to bring children to him. The families who trusted him with their kids had no idea what was happening behind closed doors. York also ran stores selling Nuwaubian books and merchandise. He personally told staff not to deposit $10,000 or more at one time, specifically to avoid federal cash reporting laws. That added financial structuring charges to an already extensive case. In January 2004, after a 3-week federal trial, York was convicted on the majority of charges. The judge sentenced him to 1,620 months, 135 years, with each count running consecutively. The sentencing judge said the punishment fit the crimes given the number of victims and how long the abuse had gone on. On March 2, 2006, he was transferred to ADX Florence in Colorado. Since then, York has filed lawsuit after lawsuit against the Bureau of Prisons over medical care, phone access, mail, attorney visits, and religious rights. Courts ruled against him on almost all of it. The most common reason: he hadn't filled out the required internal complaint forms before suing. In 2026, he filed a motion for compassionate release, citing ongoing health problems. The government has 60 days to respond. His followers never stopped. After the conviction, supporters held protests, filed fake legal documents, and at one point, tried to deliver forged paperwork directly to his maximum security prison. Some called him a political prisoner. Others argued he had diplomatic immunity as a representative of Liberia. Federal courts disagreed with all of it. He told his followers he was a divine being sent from somewhere beyond this world. He ended up in a 7-by-12-foot cell in Florence, Colorado. Number 6. Anthony Ayeni Jones. On February 24, 1997, inside a federal detention facility, a man picked up a prison phone and made a call that would get his own cousin killed. That man was Anthony Ayeni Jones, known in East Baltimore as AJ. His crew had been moving cocaine and heroin through East Baltimore since at least 1989. Prosecutors said the operation pulled in around $30,000 a day. People who got in the way, rival dealers, witnesses, anyone suspected of cooperating with the government usually ended up dead. Investigators tied the organization to at least 12 murders, and some sources put the number above 20. Prosecutors also alleged Jones had a Baltimore police officer on his payroll. Jones was arrested in Baltimore on April 3, 1996. When a rival ended up wounded at Johns Hopkins Hospital, prosecutors alleged Jones sent someone in with a hypodermic needle to finish him there. In another case, they alleged Jones arranged to have a rival killed using that rival's own bodyguards. The organization did not stop at the obvious. As investigators built their federal case, witnesses started cooperating. One of them was John Jones, Anthony's cousin, who appeared before a federal grand jury and testified about vehicles used in the drug operation. When Anthony found out, he used the prison phone system as his personal command center. While held in Washington, D.C., and later transferred to FC, the Allenwood in Pennsylvania, Jones made a series of recorded calls. He used a childish street slang to mask his orders, telling his associates to have turgy, meaning trigger, do the worgy, meaning work/murder. The Bureau of Prisons had been explicitly warned. Prosecutors flagged Jones before his transfer, noting he was under active investigation for homicide. But in a fatal display of bureaucratic negligence, the prison staff left the urgent warning fax unread on a desk. Free to walk up to a prison phone on the night of February 26, 1997, Jones finalized the hit. Hours later, John Jones was shot 4 times and killed in Baltimore. The Justice Department's Inspector General later found that the Bureau of Prisons had all the information it needed and still did not act in time. That's the kind of conclusion that sounds measured in a government report and means someone is dead in real life. Jones went to trial in 1998. Under Attorney General Janet Reno, the federal government sought the death penalty for 3 of the 5 murders in the case. The trial ran about 2 months, with more than 58 witnesses. The jury found premeditation, murder for hire, and future dangerousness, among other factors. Yet, moved by accounts of his abusive childhood, they voted for life in prison. After his formal sentencing on August 25, 1998, a court ordered the Bureau of Prisons to cut off almost all outside contact. No calls, except to his attorney. No visits, except his attorney and his mother. Limited mail. He was transferred to the federal Supermax, ADX Florence in Colorado, and placed in the ultra-restrictive control unit for 10 years. He had spent years running an organization that could reach anyone, anywhere. By the very end, the federal government put considerable effort into making sure he couldn't reach a phone. Number 5. Kaboni Savage. In March 1998, on a street in North Philadelphia, a driver named Kenneth Lassiter bumped Kaboni Savage's car by accident. It was a minor fender bender. Lassiter apologized. Savage pulled out a gun and shot him dead in cold blood. That single moment told you everything you needed to know about how Kaboni Savage handled problems. Savage grew up in North Philadelphia, went to Frankfort High School, and trained at the Front Street Gym as a boxer. He turned professional, won his only fight, and had a real shot at the sport. But when his father died of cancer, Savage was just 13 years old, and he walked away from boxing for good. By the early 1990s, he was selling PCP out of his mother's house on Darien Street. By the late 1990s, he was moving 5, 6, 7 kilos of cocaine at a time, distributing it through a crew that held corners along Erie Avenue. His operation was called the Kaboni Savage Organization, or KSO. In September 2000, Savage handed a business partner named Mansour Abdullah a red sneaker box as supposed payment, then sent his enforcer along for the ride. Abdullah was later found shot multiple times in the head, chest, and stomach, his body severely burned inside the vehicle. In early 2004, Savage was set to stand trial for the murder of Kenneth Lassiter. His main witness was Tibius Flowers, a rival dealer who had witnessed the shooting. On March 1, 2004, the night before Flowers was scheduled to testify, he was executed in his parked car. Without its star witness, the state's murder case collapsed. However, Savage remained behind bars on federal drug trafficking charges. While locked up, federal agents built a massive case against him using wiretaps. Infuriated by rats, Savage ordered his sister Kidada to have his enforcer Lamont Lewis firebomb the home of Eugene Coleman, a former associate cooperating with the government. At around 4 a.m. on October 9, 2004, Lewis and his cousin Robert Merritt attacked the home. Merritt threw 2 cans of gasoline with a lit cloth fuse into the row house. 6 people died in the inferno, including Coleman's mother and 4 children. From his prison cell, secret FBI recordings caught Savage laughing, saying he was going to make the rats' mothers cry, and mockingly called for more caskets. The historic federal trial began February 4, 2013, under unprecedented security, with an anonymous, heavily guarded jury. On May 31, 2013, the jury returned a unanimous death sentence on all 13 eligible counts. In December 2024, President Biden commuted the sentences of 37 federal death row inmates, including Savage, to life without parole. He will now spend the rest of his life in federal prison, a luxury the 6 victims on North 6th Street were never given. Number 4. Omar Portee. On August 31, 1987, Omar Portee was booked in the Bronx, New York, on armed robbery charges, looking at up to 50 years in prison. He had already figured out how to make that someone else's problem. 2 weeks earlier, a man named Terrence Joyner had been shot and killed on Grand Avenue in the Bronx. A woman named Evelyn Hall was with Joyner that night and never identified the shooter. Portee told the DA's office he had witnessed the murder and named a man called Don Taylor as the gunman. The prosecutor needed a conviction. Portee needed a deal. He got 2 to 6 years, with 21 months of credit for time served, plus a letter from the prosecutor to the parole board. He started serving on June 9, 1989. He was out by June 20, 1990. Don Taylor was convicted on April 25, 1989, and sentenced to 22.5 years to life. Taylor didn't get out until 2004. By then, Portee was locked up in a federal facility in Florida and admitted under oath that he had invented the whole story. He said he was not there and had no knowledge of Taylor's involvement. He had used the murder to cut his sentence, and it worked. A judge voided the conviction and ordered Taylor's release. More than 15 years gone. By the time Portee walked out of state prison on June 22, 1999, he had already spent 6 years building something at Rikers Island. In 1993, he co-founded United Blood Nation with another inmate named Leonard McKenzie. They borrowed the name and red colors from the Los Angeles Bloods, wrote a rule book called The 31, and started collecting dues, $31 or $93 a month from each member. To get in, new members had to survive a 31-second beating or slash a rival. Portee ran his own chapter called 1-8 Trey. On March 12, 1996, still at Rikers, he led an attack on Latin Kings members using a shiv he had sharpened from a Scrabble tile. 3 men were slashed across the face. The scars were meant to last, and they did. Face slashing became standard initiation for New York Bloods chapters after that. When Portee got out in 1999, he based his operation near 183rd Street and Davidson Avenue in the Bronx. He ran drug sales, prostitution, robberies, and credit card fraud. That address is roughly 1 block from where Terrence Joyner was killed. Whether that was intentional is not recorded. Federal agents arrested him in 2001. A jury convicted him on all 10 counts in August 2002. Judge Naomi Rice Buchwald sentenced him to 50 years in April 2003. Every single appeal was denied. He is currently inmate number 30063-037 at ADX Florence in Colorado, the only federal Supermax prison in the country. Prisoners there spend about 23 hours a day in a concrete cell, isolated from everyone. In 2021, he was moved to a step-down program at the adjacent USP Florence, which gave him limited contact with other inmates. By January 2022, he was sent back to ADX. His release date is May 23, 2044. He started robbing people at 17. He will finish paying for it at 75. Number 3. Kenneth Supreme McGriff. On September 19, 1959, Kenneth McGriff was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York. 28 years later, federal prosecutors would describe him as the man behind one of the largest drug operations New York City had ever seen. By the early 1980s, McGriff had built a crew in the Baisley Park neighborhood of Queens, called the Supreme Team. At its peak in 1987, the group was reportedly bringing in more than $200,000 a day from selling crack. That figure comes straight from federal court records, not street folklore. McGriff founded the group when he was in his early 20s. For the years the Supreme Team operated, prosecutors say he was the one who made the calls. On money, on people, and on what happened when someone got out of line. In 1987, investigators arrested McGriff. In 1989, he pleaded guilty to running a continuing criminal enterprise and received a 12-year sentence. Being locked up did not seem to stop the orders, according to DOJ. Records show McGriff and his nephew Gerald Prince Miller were accused of directing at least 8 murders that same year. McGriff got out early around 1994, violated parole, went back in, and was released again in 1997. Most people in that situation take some time to think things through. McGriff started a new drug network. Federal prosecutors called it the McGriff Enterprise. Between 1997 and 2003, this operation moved more than 30 kilograms of heroin, 150 kilograms of cocaine, and about 1.5 kilograms of crack across New York, Maryland, and North Carolina. In April 2001, police in North Carolina stopped a car and found 2 kilograms of cocaine packed in a duffel bag. Victor Wright and Karen Claret were in that car. Claret was suspected of cooperating with investigators afterward, and that suspicion cost him his life. On July 16, 2001, a man named Eric E. Moneybags Smith was shot and killed while sitting in a truck in the Bronx. McGriff allegedly hired the shooters. Then on October 21, 2001, a man named Troy Singleton was shot in the head and shot again after he fell. McGriff allegedly ordered that killing too, because he was worried Singleton would come back for the people involved in Smith's death. On August 20, 2001, Claret and a man named Dwayne Thomas were shot and killed in Owings Mills, Maryland. Investigators later linked that crime scene to McGriff through fingerprint evidence found at a stash house connected to his operation. Thomas had no connection to the drug case. He was just there. In 2007, a federal jury convicted McGriff on racketeering, 2 counts of murder for hire, drug trafficking, and money laundering. The government asked for the death penalty. The jury found him guilty on all counts, but could not reach a unanimous decision on execution. So instead, McGriff received life in prison without possibility of parole. Federal records show he was eventually placed at ADX Florence in Colorado, where the Bureau of Prisons sends the people it considers too dangerous for anywhere else. The man who once ran $200,000 a day drug operations out of Baisley Park now spends more than 22 hours a day alone in a cell. Register number 26301-053, serving a sentence that ends when he does. Number 2. Jeff Fort, on February 20th, 1947, in Aberdeen, Mississippi. A boy named Jeff Fort was born the second of 10 children to parents who picked cotton for a living. 8 years later, the whole family moved to a red brick apartment building at 6536 South Blackstone Avenue on Chicago's South Side. Locals called the building Big Red. It sat right at the corner of Woodlawn, the neighborhood where Fort would spend the next several decades building something considerably worse than a cotton farm. Fort dropped out of school in 9th grade. He had severe dyslexia and was classified as functionally illiterate. He had been placed in special education classes. What those test scores couldn't measure was the fact that he could walk into a room full of people who wanted to kill each other and convince them all to go home. His teachers called him a natural diplomat. His street nickname was Angel. He weighed 140 pounds and would physically break up fights by himself, something his teachers specifically remembered because it made no physical sense. Around 1959, at 13 years old, Fort co-founded the Blackstone Rangers inside a juvenile detention center in St. Charles, Illinois, with a boy named Eugene Hairston. Over the next 6 years, they absorbed 21 independent gangs across Chicago's South Side. By 1965, the Rangers had 5,000 members, organized under a military-style command, where each original gang kept its own general reporting directly to Fort. In 1967, Fort set up a non-profit called Grassroots Independent Voters of Illinois and applied for federal anti-poverty funding. The U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity handed over $1 million for what was described as a job training program. President Nixon praised the effort. In 1969, Fort was personally invited to Nixon's inauguration. He had 45 police bookings on his record at the time. The federal investigation later found that Fort had taken $1,467.79 for himself as program director. He was convicted in 1972 and sent to Leavenworth for 5 years. After Leavenworth, Fort converted to Islam, renamed the gang El Rukn, and bought an old movie theater at 3947 South Drexel in Chicago in 1977. He reinforced the building with bulletproof steel and painted his last name above the front door. The building was registered as a mosque. It held prayer services and community events. It also ran cocaine distribution and coordinated murder contracts. In 1986, Fort was inside a federal prison in Bastrop, Texas, on a drug conviction. From his cell, he contacted the Libyan government under Muammar Gaddafi and proposed a deal. El Rukn would bomb a U.S. government building, shoot down a commercial airplane, and assassinate a Milwaukee City official in exchange for $2.5 million. The FBI found out through wiretaps, sent in an undercover agent who posed as a weapons dealer, and sold Fort's crew a rocket launcher that had been disabled. It couldn't fire. Fort was convicted in November 1987 and sentenced to 80 years for the terrorism charges. A drug sentence and a 75-year sentence for a murder he ordered put the total at 168 years. He is held at ADX Florence in Colorado, under rules that cut off nearly all outside contact. He has been there since 2006. Number 1. Larry Hoover. By the summer of 1994, at Vienna Correctional Center in southern Illinois, Larry Hoover was running an estimated $100 million a year in drug sales. He was also serving a prison sentence of 150 to 200 years at the time. Vienna was minimum security, so he wore designer clothes, ate specially prepared meals, and held private meetings with top lieutenants during visiting hours. The state of Illinois, to its credit, did not miss this. Hoover grew up in Englewood on Chicago's South Side. By age 12, he was already running with a street gang. By 13, he was an active member of the Supreme Gangsters, taking part in robberies and street fights. At 15, after the gang's leader was killed in an unsolved murder, he took over and grew the crew past 1,000 members. In 1969, he merged with David Barksdale's Black Disciples to form the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. When Barksdale died in 1974, Hoover became the sole leader. The operation was already bringing in over $1,000 a day from drug sales on the South Side, and that was 1974 money. The sentence came first, actually. On February 26, 1973, a 19-year-old drug dealer named William Young was kidnapped and killed. Investigators said Hoover ordered it over a stolen drugs dispute inside the gang. He was convicted in December 1973 and sentenced to 150 to 200 years in Illinois State Prison. His co-defendant, Andrew Howard, the man who actually fired the gun, served 20 years and was released. Illinois sent him to Stateville Correctional Center, a maximum security facility. He used the prison's phone system to run gang operations from inside, and over several years, arranged a transfer to Vienna. His lawyers argued the move was a sign of rehabilitation. Prosecutors would later describe it differently. In the early 1990s, he also changed the gang's name on paper. GD would no longer stand for Gangster Disciples. It now stood for Growth and Development. The organization set up voter drives, community events, and a nonprofit. Prosecutors later said the nonprofit was mainly used to launder drug proceeds. Federal investigators spent 6 years building a case. They hid listening devices inside visitor badges handed out at Vienna, and those badges recorded more than 8,000 private conversations. In August 1995, federal agents arrested Hoover and 38 of his top lieutenants. In 1997, a jury convicted him on all 40 counts: drug conspiracy, racketeering, and running a continuing criminal enterprise. He received 6 consecutive life sentences and was transferred to ADX Florence in Colorado, a facility designed so that the people inside it cannot communicate with anyone outside. He spent close to 30 years there, 23 hours a day in a concrete cell. He also suffered 3 separate heart attacks during that time. On May 28, 2025, President Trump commuted all 6 federal life sentences to time served. Hoover, now 74, was removed from federal custody. But a presidential commutation only covers federal sentences. The 1973 Illinois murder conviction still stands. Without state action, his next Illinois parole eligibility date is 2062. In January 2026, the Illinois Prisoner Review Board is scheduled to hear his clemency petition. If the board recommends release, the final decision belongs to Governor J.B. Pritzker. 7 men. Different cities, different crews, different crimes, but the same ending. A concrete cell in Colorado that the outside world eventually forgets about. None of them started out thinking they'd end up there. Most of them started out with nothing, in neighborhoods that didn't offer much of anything else. That's not an excuse, but it is the truth. The street doesn't warn you where it leads. It just takes you there. And by the time you see the destination clearly, you're already too far in to turn back. If this hit different, hit the like button. That's how YouTube decides whether more people get to see this. Drop your city in the comments. Every comment tells the algorithm this story matters. And if you're on your phone right now, hit the hype button below the video. It only works on mobile, and it's the fastest way to get this in front of someone who's standing at a crossroads right now, before the street takes them somewhere they can't come back from.